Welcome back to Cry About It, the podcast about all that sad music that we love and it makes us oh so happy. Today, I'm joined by American Buffalo Ghost, aka Sean Flynn. Sean is actually a folk artist, and what makes me so excited about music is that it tells a story. And I'm a lyrics guy first, and I think folk music, better than any other music, is a storyteller's music. So I'm extremely excited to have Sean on. Full disclaimer, I've known Sean for a long time. I'm a huge fan of his music, and I'm really excited about this interview. So, Sean, thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much, my friend. This is really kind of cool, but weird at the same time to be doing these kind of interviews. But talking to anybody other than my dog or my wife, I love her, is cool for me.
So, Sean has a new album that just dropped, and we're going to touch on that a little bit later. But right now, I kind of want to talk about the storytelling aspect of folk music, right? So, you've played in punk bands.
Yeah.
That's how I think we originally met, and you've been doing the folk thing again, like I said, that I'm a huge fan of. What was the transition like coming from the punk side to folk? Like, was it a natural transition, or had you always, had that in the back of your head?
Yeah, it was incredibly easy for me because as deep as I was into the scene, and the Northeast Pennsylvania scene, and being in the time frame that we're talking about here is actually very important. We're talking right around the time of like the Menzingers on the Impossible Path. So Scranton was kind of getting the light shine back on it, and I was in punk bands, and with the hundreds of other great bands that were in our area. Like being in that world, in the back of my mind, I always liked this music. I always knew folk music. I always played it at home. It's to the point of where it was a slight issue when I was in my punk band, Those Clever Foxes, because those guys grew up listening to a lot of ska, 90s pop punk, and like the Blink 182 and Streetlight Manifesto, that world. I don't know anything about that. So I didn't know how to keep those kind of rhythms or those kind of chord progressions, melodies. I didn't know that though, but I would just kind of do what I did or have to relearn how to play the guitar a certain way to play in that scene. And when that was all shed away, this was just like, what do they say? Like, riding a bike, you don't forget. It was just like, no, folk music. I know acoustic music. I know how it goes. I know that kind of world. So this to me is just, it is so natural and easy to me. A lot easier and natural than the punk music. It's just yeah.
So my first I guess introduction to like really becoming part of this of a scene and loving music and really diving in, like my favorite artist when I was like of the coming of age was Dashboard Confessional. And I
Yeah.
remember hearing the Dashboard Confessional acoustic album, like the unplugged MTV thing, and that's what really got me into it. And it was acoustic, and the lyrics were so meaningful, and people were singing along to it, and they knew all the words. And I don't think that there's such a far distance from folk music to like acoustic punk and folk punk and like a Frank Turner and a Chris Regan and people like that. So I like I said, I love lyrics and I love storytelling. Like a song that's meaningful to me means like is better than the craziest
Yeah.
guitar solos and everything like that, right? And I connect with that music, and I've always connected with everything that you've put out and been a huge fan of it. So what inspiration like that always like is something that fascinates me because I'm not a songwriter, I'm not a musician. Like I my way to be part of music was to be the background guy and be involved in all that stuff because I wanted to be part of it so bad, but I could never. I just have no musical bone in my body, right?
Yeah. Well, but you're always around though. That was just as important. You just said
Right? Yeah, I
you're
did
always there. So
did what I could from the periphery. But
yeah.
what is it like inside your brain when you're writing a song? Especially like a lot of your songs are written from an outside perspective. Like some of these songs are almost telling a story of a long time ago or something. It's not they're not all necessarily personal stories.
Yeah, no. you just kind of hit it right on the head there. It's like you just got to tell the story. It's like, I gotta think how I want to say that. You just, if you immerse yourself in the world of this kind of music, you just, it all filters out one way or another. There's the song on the record. The last song is called "The White Comanche Lady." That I wrote that song, even though when I was in the studio doing it, they thought it was like another cover. I was like, no, I wrote it, and they thought it was some obscure Woody Guthrie song or something like that. And it's just me retelling it's based on, should I say, it's based on a song that is already written called Blackjack Davy, which is like 200 some years old. I was reading a book called The Empire of the Summer Moon, which was about the history of the Comanches in West Texas. So it's a big, big, heavy book. I just told a version of that book in the context of that song. So, and I made it my own. So it's a semi-true story of a guy going to get killed, trying to get his wife back, finding out she's actually in love with this Comanche brave, and she gives up on him. And I was like, it's a true story. And you're right, I have that is a complete outside perspective. There's nothing personal about that it's just a story that came through. The mindset is just man, that's a good question, really. You kind of got me on that. The mindset is to just, I would say, just get into that world of the weird stuff, the weird Americana, the old stories, the stories about just people dying, and then like there's a flood, or like there's no crops this year, or I've been working real hard and I got nothing to show for it, and then my woman left me, but the sun gonna shine in my back door someday. Like it's just that mindset of it. Yeah, man, that's a good question. I've never had anybody ask me what's the mindset of being in that. That's just tough. I guess it's just me, just a mindset. Like, you get guys who write songs, that's their mindset. You get a guy like Ed Kuzo, very well respected. He writes Ed Kuzo songs. You get Dan Rossler, Estico, To Fire with Friends. He writes those songs. That's his thing. This is my thing.
Yeah.
This is telling old stories, living in that old weird America. I thrive on that.
So then are you a bit of a history buff?
Absolutely. Yes.
Okay. And so I love history, and specifically American history and Irish history. But then also I took a couple classes in college that were like the history of music, which fascinates me. And obviously everything that we have now that is modern music evolved from folk music, right? The Scotch Irish, country music kind of evolved from that. And like that Scots Irish, but it was always an oral history.
Telling
right?
telling stuff of like telling the news, or like telling just stuff like that. Yeah, a lot of those songs, the one song on the record, St. James Infirmary. I had to do a little bit of research on that. That song goes back 300 plus years. And I know that America wasn't around then, so it had to come from somewhere. And that's an old Gaelic Irish song, came over to America, made its way down to New Orleans, made its way back up to Chicago, and then it just became what it is. So you're 100% right. Like, a lot of these songs, the melodies all echo each other. There's a thing. That's another thing about this kind of music. You can listen to 5 different songs, and there's a good chance 3 out of those 5 will have the same lyrics or the same kind of melody. It's because it all came from the same place, and then it just got filtered into the American system. So,
well, that's you had kind of mentioned in passing that like you called there's cover songs on the album, and that's for people who maybe aren't as familiar with folk. That's extremely common amongst folk music, and I almost look at them as not when I'm listening to people like Woody Guthrie and everybody's done it, not even as covers. It's really just that person's interpretation of that song. because you
Yeah,
can listen to the same song so many times and it's completely different.
yeah. It's the one song, there's a Robert Johnson song on there. I mean, Robert Johnson was almost like the Big Bang for me, but in this kind of music though. But I can't play like him. I can't sing like him. So I was like, I like this song. Let's just try it. Do something with it. But there's another song on there, another Woody Guthrie song I did called "The Great Philadelphia Lawyer." I listened to the recordings of that song, a lot of versions that have been done with it, and I just had this vision in my head of like a lone cowboy out in the desert at night. 'Cause that's kind of what the context of the song is. If you look at the lyrics, it's got that, lonely but free, I'll be found. That mindset. And I was like, that's what I want to do. I want it to be like I really slowed it down. I took away a lot of the instruments because the song was a bit of theater at some point when people covered it. It's a semi-popular old song, but I just took it and said, no, I'm just going to do it the way I really hear it in my head. It's real intimate and lonely, but I don't know. It's probably one of my favorite songs on the record. And then,
I like
um,
I like that one a lot too.
yeah, yeah,
That
that
was
that one
I have that in my
that
notes.
came out. That came out. Thank you. That came out better than I expected, to be honest, with when I did that song. So um, that's a weird one when I play it live. It's like one of those where I get people who are like, "Oh, that was really good," or I get the other people who are like, "Yeah, what else you got?" Like, yeah, okay. Like
Right.
it is what it is.
Do you feel, I don't know if responsibility is the word, but yeah, let's go with that. Do you feel like a responsibility to keep these songs alive, or to keep, true to the songs, writers, things like that, as you're doing, the historic songs?
Um, that's a great question. I want to say yes and no. I feel like it's a personal responsibility. I don't have the platform or the status. I don't feel anyway. I don't put myself up on that of like I'm carrying the banner of this because I'm not the only guy doing this. There's a bunch of guys out in the world doing this same thing. But in my heart and mind, it's a very it's a personal responsibility. Yes, to answer your question of and I'd be doing myself a disservice if I wasn't doing this. It's like some kind of thing. It's like you don't know why you want to make the music you make or the art you want to make. You just let it go, and that's what it is. That's how I feel about this. That doesn't mean I don't love rock and roll, and I still play electric guitar and I play loud music still regularly. But yeah, you're right. I feel a slight bit of like, no, that is truly where the calling is for me. And I look at a lot of my friends and fellow people in the scene and everything like that, and what they do and the music they make and everything, and they believe in it, and they make it with original songs, and it's like my heart is completely full and content by doing those songs, not my songs, those songs, and I can live with that. That's why I was thrilled that this album is half my material, half covers. And I was like, that's the way it should be because that's the big picture and that's what I believe in. So,
I love that, and I think that a lot of those songs are so important because, like I said, in folk music, I feel like a lot of those songs get passed on, and I love to see them continue to evolve and
yeah,
stay alive. And I mean, we're both from Scranton, Pennsylvania area, and I mean your last name's Flynn, so I gotta assume there's some Irish heritage
a little bit.
in there somewhere, right? And I mean
Yeah,
by this beard, we could tell that the
yeah.
Vikings the Vikings ransacked some of my Irish ancestors at some point and got these genes in me. But I feel like it's strange to me. So I listen to and constantly, it's like the background music in our house are like IRA folk songs, right? Like that music's just there, and that's what puts, like, my son, from the time he was born, the music I would rock him to sleep for and what would soothe him was like Danny Boy and then like the Black and Tans and like all that Irish IRA, like but old Irish folk songs.
The Clancy Brothers and stuff like that. You listen to the Clancy Brothers, Tommy
Clancy
Makem with the
Brothers.
Clancy Brothers. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And the Dubliners and all that stuff. And like it's like he just like it was like in him. Right?
Mm.
Like he'll like it'll come on and he clicks to it no matter what.
Yeah.
It's
That's
just
cool
like
too.
in the blood. So I'm like, I feel like there's like that music, like I never, like my father never listened to it, right? But like my great aunts and uncles and the people who were like off the boat listened to it. And I remember even as a little kid, like just loving, like it gave me a feeling of something, right? And I feel like they're like possibly for you as well, like it's just in our blood, like that type of music. Like there's something out of genetics, whatever, that stayed with us, like that music came over and it stayed in there, you know?
Yeah, no, you already just said exactly the story over there. My parents didn't listen to this kind of music. My mom saw the Beatles, for God's sakes. Like, so like my dad saw the Rolling Stones at their height of like the height of the Rolling Stones, the early 70s. So like that was them. Like they were the children of the 60s, like the Woodstock generation. That was my parents. So the the Bob Dylan thing, my parents were like, yeah, we remember, yeah, obviously we know who Bob Dylan is. Yeah, they might have had Highway 61 revisited. They weren't into that. So they are like, you know, very proud of me, thankfully, of like what I'm doing with this kind of music. But they're like, where did this come from? Like, where are you like listening to Woody Guthrie, Robert Johnson, Blind Lemon Jefferson, Big Willie, you know, Big Bill Broonzy, Blind Willie McTell, Cisco Houston? These are just names in the back of books now that are, they were once upon a time people, you know, and then it would turn into like, you know, Bob Wills and the Texas Playboys, Gene Autry make its way to Muddy Waters, Howlin' Wolf, and then it would, you know, work its way to like the band or like the Grateful Dead for a little bit when they went into that kind of American Beauty, Working Man's Dead thing. My parents weren't into any of that. So they're just very much like something has to be circling from somewhere in the beyond of why I'm into this kind of music, and I don't care, you know. I like it, so.
Right. 100%. I really I think that because it's folk music to me is timeless. It's been here. It's not going. You know. But it's not like at least in our lifetime. It's never been the popular music, and because I'm not going to count like
Yeah.
the folk pop stuff that like had a run a couple years ago, right? But
Yeah.
so that, but it's always been a constant where it always exists, right? And it's this oral history. So that's why I feel like it's almost like a calling or like it's in certain people. You know?
People don't realize how big of a community this Americana is. People don't like that word. A lot of people in that community, they don't like the word. I do. I think it's a great blanket that separates a lot of the lines, but it also blankets a lot as well. It's a vast community of musicians and acts that are in this world, and it's like the same thing with like this is a hell of a jump here, but like when I found out about that giant metal festival in Germany, the Wacken Festival, I never heard of that, but it gets like what 100,000 people with bands that I never heard of, and they're selling out the stages, and it's like obviously there's something there. This is the same kind of thing. It's like you might look at a bill of this kind of music and there might be 20 names underneath it, and then at the top it'll say like the Ava Brothers or Jason Isbell because they're huge,
Right.
but they're at the top of the mountain of this kind of music. But this is a very big, very, very big community. But having said that, like I said before, when it's that big, everybody's got to do a little bit more than just cover "Will the Circle Be Unbroken" again for the 1,000th time. You know,
Right.
you got to stand out a little bit. You can't just get up there and be like, "Oh, I'm doing Woody Guthrie songs." It's just like, great. So is the block around the corner. It is, so it's a very good and bad thing, but I think it goes that way for any music community. Like, you know, it's very welcoming and very big though, but you know, you're gonna be just another face in the crowd if you're not trying to do something a little different. Um, and I think for me with this record, I don't think I wasn't actually thinking globally. I was thinking very locally, to be honest. I don't think I was trying to be like, this will get me to the top of something and blah, 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 blah. And I'm going to be this guy. I just wanted to be something different for our area because I don't feel like a record like this, not that it hasn't been done. A lot of great guys, Cabinet Dudes, Cold Town Rounders, all those from years back all did this kind of thing. Dave Brown and the Dishonest Fiddlers still doing this kind of thing. So it's not like I'm the only guy, but I definitely don't see, or I personally didn't see anybody doing it like this with the songs that I wrote, the cover of the record, because I think the cover is actually really kind of striking.
I love it.
Yeah, and I was just thinking more a line of how much of a dent can I make in the area, and I'll work on getting to the next pedestal at my own pace. Mm-hmm. I don't know if it makes me sound like a dick. I'm sorry if it does, but that was just where I was thinking.
That's actually where I was going, because I was going to say, I think like you were saying about the Americana kind of getting thrown around, right? So I've always thought you were different than all of those other acts, but I also know, at least from an outside looking in standpoint of seeing what shows you play, that you are respected in some way because you opened for you would open for the Cold Town Rounders guys, and I've seen you on bills with JP and Pappy and all of the people who are doing that, and the Dishonest Fiddlers and everybody. But I think that you are in that, like, all of those bands I think are so diametrically different from each other, right? But they all work together and they all fit together, and you fall into that, like, especially in Northeast PA, right? Like it's a wonderful area, but there's only so many people, and I think that when you're building a bill, there's only so many bands, and people kind of get to experience those different corners of that genre, which I think is awesome because it all works together. But I've always thought that even some of those are a lot closer to each other, and a lot of it teeters more towards the bluegrassy, stringy stuff. Whereas I've always thought you were more of the folk purist in there, or like, I don't know if that's the right word, but more the acoustic, like, so like when I think of folk, like I love Bob Seger or Bob Seger. I love Pete Seeger. So like Pete Seeger and Woody Guthrie, and that's kind of where I come from in my folk experience. So they're more of the full bands, whereas you're, the solo artist up there, which I think is harder at some aspects to try to do, and I've always respected that.
Well, thank you very much. But no, that you're 100% right with like the Woody Guthrie, Pete Seeger, that avenue, that's mine right there. That's the lane I stay in. I take a billion other influences that, as any artist does though, but it was just like, nope, that's it. That's exactly right. It's like, I'm not afraid to play bluegrass string music on my own, but it's going to sound like a guy with an acoustic guitar, but I got to make it sound more of like a folky. And it's like another guy, Dave Van Ronk. I don't know if you're familiar with Dave Van Ronk.
No.
He was Coen Brothers made the movie Inside Llewyn Davis. It's based off of him.
Oh, okay.
So it in the very heavy influence, but then they took a lot of liberties as well, because I read the book that movie is allegedly based off of. But same thing. He would do blues, ragtime, old jazz songs, and what would be considered bluegrass songs, and just break it down to just him with his 3 fingers and 6 strings. That's it. And so he's a massive influence on me, to the point where like my arrangement of St. James Infirmary is incredibly based off of what he did. He got a little bit more intricate with the notes, and he jazzed it up a little bit more, and I kind of brought more of a gruffness to it. I think a little bit of like the leftover punk rock in me smeared over that, because it's a little bit rough. It's not too fancy, but it's there. But I lean very heavily on Dave Van Ronk. But no, I could see what you're saying very much so about all those other acts who I love, and I love those guys and everything about. They all are different, but leaning the same. And I am what I am. I'm a guy by myself with a acoustic guitar. You know, I have a band sometimes when we play, and you saw us when we play as a band, and it's very different.
Mhm.
It's
It's
very
great
radical.
though.
Well, thank you. It's very loud. That's me just trying to be like Neil Young, where I was like, we're gonna just go for it. But really, this music and this act is just me with an acoustic guitar doing folk songs.
So I definitely noted a little bit of some blues influence in there, which I liked, and I thought it complemented the album really well when it came through on the songs that it came through on, especially that St. James Infirmary song, which
Oh,
I really liked. And I was gonna ask you about that, like how much of an influence blues is on your music, or if you're a big fan of blues in general.
oh man, I think, man, I'll be real honest with you, man. I think the blues to me is more influential than say like the Woody Guthrie stuff. But I mean, I completely latch on to all the people we already mentioned, but like the blues is massive to me. And I mean, like it, I've never actually even said that. I've always just been like, yeah, the folk guy and all this other stuff though. But like Robert Johnson, Blind Willie McTell, Big Bill Broomsey, just the Lightning Hopkins, a lot of those kind of guys. And there's a billion names that are all got filtered, and then the best ones came to the top, and you still remember them because they're at the top. But there's, you know, I got a record of an actual chain gang in Mississippi, and they're singing songs. They're actual prisoners, and they're just doing chain gang songs. You want to hear the blues? I mean, these are actual field recordings, and you're like, you don't get any realer than that, you know.
Yeah.
And so it's like that incredibly influences me. So yeah, the blues
So,
are massive to me.
so like I love the blues, and I'm like I feel ignorant to like fandom of it, like where I love like live. It's like one of my favorite platforms to ever listen to, but I don't know names, right? Like, but I know like it evokes like a feeling in me, and I love to listen to it. Every year we go to the Billstown Blues Festival in outside of Williamsport in
Yeah,
Houston, and the same thing. Like I don't know, like we go. I never even look to see who's playing it. I just know that like I'm gonna walk in there at noon to a field. I'm gonna set up a pop up. I'm gonna hang out all day and play like cornhole and drink a couple beers with like good friends, and have a relaxing day listening to like some of the best music that I've ever heard. And people just like come up and switch off. And like I've always like just been fascinated by the blues. And there's amazing blues people in Northeast PA, of course, but I it's one of my like life goals to really dive in, because like you said, like I know the big names, right? Like
yeah.
that made blues, and I've watched the documentaries, and the influence on rock always fascinates me and everything, and the Delta blues and all that. But that's one of my like legitimate like I don't know bucket list, but like my list of things to do like on the greater level of life is like dive into the blues. But it's so overwhelming whenever I like decide to, because I'm just like there's the greatest blues artist like and the greatest blues song of all time could have had 10 test printings that like found a local record shop, and I'm gonna dig it out of like a storage unit that like has dust on it, nobody's listened to it in 20 years. So
That's
it's
the best stuff
just
though.
so
Those are
amazing,
the good
right?
ones. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Um, you know, yeah. I mean, the blues and and just to, like, you know, just to set the scene of it though. It's like this wasn't like I was like 12 or 13 years old and I was like way hip and I was looking for like, you know, Blind Willie Johnson Ret 45s, or, you know, trying to find some old Louis Armstrong stuff. No, my introduction to the blues, no question, 100% was the White Stripes. Not Jack White, because he wasn't Jack White yet. He was just the
Right.
guy in the White Stripes. No question. If I had not heard those first four White Stripes albums, I don't know where it would have went, but I knew that I was like, it changed me like vividly when I heard their cover of Death Letter Blues, their version of St. James Infirmary, which was very like, oh, it was like very like carnival sounding. It was really more of like a Cab Calloway kind of a thing.
Mhm.
but like just hearing Jack White rip a guitar solo and it was a blues song, like a blues thing. That was it. I was like, I need to know what this is, where does it come from, and where can I get it? And that was the rabbit hole of like First Stop, Robert Johnson, Son House, Willie Brown, all those guys. Just that was it. And then the folk music, the Woody Guthrie, all those guys came a little late, but the door that opened through that obviously was Bob Dylan. Bob Dylan. I don't need to say anything else.
Right.
But yeah, so as far as that goes, like Jack White to me, and I always took shit, should I say, about like always having them as like my favorite band, because again, all the guys I ran with in the music scene, they were all into like, early Anti-Flag and Rise Against and all that great stuff. And I would be like, no, man, I like the White Stripes, and they would just roll their eyes and laugh at me. But I was like, I don't give a damn. I was just like, listen to this sound, like listen to the distortion, like this is heavier than anything you got. And it's a guy with a big muff guitar pedal and a girl just banging the drums. I was like, I can go sonically toe for toe with you all day if you want to play that game. But I believed in what I was hearing through the White Stripes. So they're always going to be my favorite band, and they will always have a place in my heart. And I will always be grateful for the life-changing world that I got through them.
Well, that's why I think it's so important or so great that you cover some songs on the album, right? Because you could be some kid's first introduction to those songs that then they look it up and they fall down that rabbit hole and they dig deeper into music and they get there. I mean, that's happened to me from everybody from like Old Crow Medicine Show. I mean, I think people hear Wagon Wheel and they're like, okay, they put it out. Like maybe they get that far, but they're thinking, what's his name from Hootie did it and like just like ran it into the ground. Well, that's a Bob Dylan song.
Yeah.
That's a Dylan song, and Dylan gave Old Crow the sign off on it. He didn't give whatever his name is the sign off on it, like and Old Crow Medicine Show. But that was like in college, like that song was just on at the bar every weekend. Like, so I was like, this song's great, and then that led me into Old Crow Medicine Show, who do so many old songs that like that brought me down all kinds of rabbit holes to like find, and they pull songs from everywhere. And then I mean another one would be Nirvana. I mean Kurt Cobain's, and I hate Nirvana, but I'm sorry to anybody listening. I do hate Nirvana.
I don't like them either, but I respect them.
100%. I'm fully aware. I'm fully aware that every musician that I love exists because of Nirvana, but at the same time, like it's just so like I just can't listen to it anymore. And so now I say I hate it. I probably don't hate it, but I hate it. His the Muddy Waters cover that he did.
Lead Belly. Where did you sleep last night?
Lead Belly. Yeah. Where did you sleep last night? Like, that's like Kurt Cobain's version is chilling and beautiful and amazing. And that's my favorite thing that Nirvana ever did. And then, but then that led me down that rabbit hole, like at an early age of like, so I just thought it was a Nirvana song. And I remember like playing it and my like grandfather was like, that's not a Nirvana song. Like,
yeah, it's not a Nirvana song.
Like, listen to this new song I found on Napster. He's like, no. And then he like, that's digging through his records and like led me into like all this other stuff. So I think that it's so important that people keep those songs alive and reinvent them. Even, some people that like, sometimes it comes out and it's the guy from Hootie and the Blowfish doing that. But if that leads somebody to Bob Dylan, then that's great.
Yeah. Like I'd be really taken back if someone heard my record and like, what is that? And that opened up the door for them. Like I had opened up for me. That would blow my mind. I wasn't thinking like that. I was just thinking of what I wanted to do and everything. I'll give you a quick little funny story about those songs. Something about putting this album up, by the way. I didn't tell anybody this. No, I kept it kind of low key because I didn't really know where it was going to play out. But uploading that record to social media sites or like streaming sites was a lot more difficult than I thought it was going to be, because I didn't know some of those songs, and they still have not told me. I have a hunch are still somewhat copyrighted, and I was like, these songs are over 100 years old. Therefore, they're public domain in the court of law. I know for a fact
Yeah.
two of them are over 150 years old. St. James Infirmary is one of them, and Satan, Your Kingdom Must Come Down. Old as shit. All right. So I don't know what they wanted from me. And then even if I had to go find the copyright or publishing right for that song, I can't even be sure that that's the person who actually wrote it, because the song is so old. They could have just took it. But I had to jump through some hoops. I don't want to go too far. I could just cover myself up, but like I had to jump through a little bit of hoops and hit up certain people and get the things I needed to get straightened out before it became on Spotify. But to get like copyright and basically they sent me an email saying, who's going to get paid? That's not you. That's what they told me. And I was like, I'm not going to get paid, so I don't know what you're talking about. But I could not believe that I was being held up against the wall over something like that with these songs. And it really, really bothered me. Not so much because it was just holding up the big picture of holding everything up and everything. It'll eventually get taken care of. But I remember saying to my wife and to my father was, I don't think Woody Guthrie would have approved that. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think Woody Guthrie would have shut me down because I want to do one of his songs and make sure he gets the paycheck. You know what I mean? It goes against the entire idea of what that man stood for. And I just was saying to myself, I was like, I thought that was just painfully ironic and aggravating that, like, I just wanted to make a record like this, but who would have thought in this day and age over this music, the tax man's still going to come. You know what I mean? And
100%.
I did the right thing. I got around what I had to do, and luckily it all got sorted out and it's still streaming and everything's fine. But yeah, that was very, very aggravating 3 days. I'll say that.
You're not the first person that I've heard talk about that. It seems to be a common occurrence, and usually it is somebody that just tries to jump on, something that is in the public domain, but tries to like weasel around it, and hopefully, usually it works out for
I mean,
the
it
good
wasn't
guy.
like, it wasn't like I was covering like a Rolling Stone song.
Right.
Who, got an army of lawyers ready for this, like, or a Beatles song, or like a Queen song where they've got guys ready to take care of this. I could see, and I should expect that. To do a Woody Guthrie song or a Robert Johnson song or an old gospel song or the jazz song that I do, getting held up because the tax man didn't get notified. It just really got into the back of my brain. But it is what it is.
Justifiably so. So when you're doing these folk songs, does music come from, or this album specifically, right? Does the influence, do you draw from all over the place? Because I made a list as I was listening to the album, right, of just little pieces of different people that I heard or different artists that I heard.
Huh?
So like I heard everything from like, I definitely heard a little bit of Pete Seeger in some of it. I put Dylan, I put Muddy Waters, Old Crow Medicine Show, Harry Chapin. And at one point, even like there was something you were doing with your voice in the one song that I legitimately like was brought to Alabama, the like country band, right? which I mean, some of their older stuff is like they do some older folk songs that they turn into like kind of cheese 90s country. But I heard there was something you were doing, and it wasn't like your voice didn't sound like it, but just the inflections you were using. I was like, man, like what?
Yeah.
And it had me for like an hour. I was sitting there, I listened to the song like 10 times. I'm like, what is this from? What is this from? What is this from? And I was like, Alabama.
What song was it?
Roll On. What song of yours was it?
Yeah.
I think it was the first one. The Devil's Fingers.
Okay. That song, little story with that one, but never. Okay, I don't think I own an Alabama record. I'm a pretty fan, but I don't think I've ever owned an Alabama record. That song specifically, there is a little story to it. Real quick, was I'm hugely influenced by Gillian Welch and Dave Rawlings. They're a folk duo. She's like the queen on top. Like I said that community, that Americana community, she'd be up there, and she's like very much something to look up to, and fantastic songwriter. Not a fancy guitar player. Dave is the lead guitar player, just 2 acoustic guitars. She's just a straight strummer, but she writes gorgeous songs, and they have a great vocal melody. I listened to their records and I said, I want to write a song that I would like to hear them play. So I sat writing that song, thinking of like, how would they word this? How would they do the chord changes here with this melody? What would it work with? And that's when I got Jen to play, sing on it, and JP from Cabinet to play on it. And that was just straight up like influenced by hearing them. And someone asked me about it. They were like, God, man, what was going through your mind? It must have been a tough thing. And like, are you okay with your wife or your girlfriend? And I said, I was maybe thinking of my then girlfriend, now wife, when I wrote it, but it really wasn't anything. It was like it's almost like, what do they call that? Fan fiction, where you write your own Star Wars or your own Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
That's essentially what that was. I wanted to hear what like a song like this sung by them. And if they ever did it, I'd be like, that's it, boys, I'm done. I've hit the goal. I'm done. If some universe they find that song and cover it, I'd be like, done. That's it. I've officially peaked for me. So yeah, that's a weird thing that you should point out that song, thinking one thing, but I know exactly where it came from.
Yeah. I like that you say that, like the fan fiction thing, because that immediately brought me back to, have you ever seen Almost Famous?
Oh yeah.
When he's like interviewing them, he's like, and they just like look at him and walk away. And he's like, he thinks he's being super profound, 16-year-old. And he's like, do you have to be sad to write a sad song? Do you have to be happy to write a happy song? And they're like, no. They just like walk away from him, or dismiss him or whatever. But
you sound like buffoons. We're breaking up. What is this? Yeah,
yeah, exactly. But no, so the album came out 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
Correct? Yeah, 2 weeks ago. It's great driving music. I want to say that. So I listened to that. I drove my my wife's aunt back to like rural Upper Bucks County that weekend, and just took like a scenic route through, they call it like the poor man's Poconos, through like Upper Black Eddy.
Yeah.
And I had that song on for the entire ride, and the entire ride back. Then I decided to take the long way back down through Lancaster to Harrisburg, and I listened to it like 3 times through, and it was like early spring, Pennsylvania. It was just like the perfect soundtrack for that drive, right? It had everything I needed. So I encourage everybody to check it out. I saw you just recently got it up on Spotify, which you kind of talked about that, right?
Yeah.
And it's on Bandcamp.
Mm-hmm.
And like you said, it's great. It leads off with the really strong the single. You had put that out a little earlier. You had sent it to me, at least. I've heard that song before,
yeah.
I believe. Yeah.
Well, the story with that is, like, I've said this story before though, but it was like where I had an entire different album made, done, front to back, finished, and it was all original songs, and I was gonna put it out April of 2020. That obviously, right. So I put the single out with the intention of the album rolling out, and then the longer I sat on the record, I hated it. I didn't like what I was hearing. I said, I'm trying to sound like Jason Isbell or Tyler Childers or anybody else. I'm not sounding like me. And I hated it, and I scrapped it. And then I made this record. I workshopped the ideas and what the songs, the arrangements for the covers, and I wrote the rest of the originals were already laying around, or they were brand new. That previous record that I scrapped, 3.5 weeks of work on it, and I wasn't satisfied with it. This record, 9 hours, done.
That's awesome.
And it was like, that was it. So But yeah, so that song's been around a while, and and it actually kind of got like picked up a little bit out west, Colorado way. Some radio station was playing it. They sent me a message last year, and I was thank you. I was very happy about that, but I wasn't thinking about it. I was like, actually, I was panicking because like this single now was getting played out in Colorado by some radio station I've never heard of, and now I'm like, oh my god, I'm sitting on a crap record, and this everybody's like already waiting for it, and I'm like, I hate it. I'm screwed. You know,
Right.
that was going through my mind a little bit, but now I'll be like, hey man, you can play the whole record front to back if you want. I'm thrilled with it.
That's awesome. And just to wrap everything up, I mean, we're hopefully rounding the corner on this pandemic thing. And I got vaccinated. You were saying how you got vaccinated. We were talking before this. What are the plans moving forward? What are you looking forward to, or what are your hopes for the album and just for music in general as we move forward?
I actually already got gig offers. Now that things are slowly starting to open up, I'm a little bit more easy to accept them. But that doesn't necessarily mean they're going to happen. I'm not getting my hopes up. I could pencil into my calendar, absolutely, I'll play these dates, these dates, these dates, but I don't believe it'll fully happen until we get to that time frame because this whole thing was supposed to last 2 to 4 weeks. We're going in a year and some change now, so we have no idea what's going to happen. But um, I would love to get out and play. I had a whole tour ready to go last year, got canned. I don't think I'll be able to get those dates back because, just a touring guy that they don't really know. And, circumstances changed over the year. I get it. It is what it is. I just, man, I really hope there's some venues, some local businesses as well, get back to getting live music. And, I'm hopeful, and that's about as all I can be at this point because everything is still incredibly uncertain. Um, it's a real drag. Yeah, I mean, I feel real bad for a lot of guys I know locally and who are on the bigger national touring scene. That's their bread and butter. They were hurting last year. I'm very fortunate and very grateful that I still had my job, able to work from home, safely, still getting a paycheck. That was fine. So I did lose a lot of money with gigs that got canceled last year. I was supposed to do that one with the dude from the old 97s at Stage West last year. That was going to be already talk of selling out by the time the show was going to get there. And it didn't happen. So slots like that, I lost a lot. I still got a paycheck every 2 weeks. I still had a job. I know a lot of guys, they had to go hustle and pick up whatever job they can find, and then places are closing and everything. And these guys who need that money on the Friday and Saturdays, Sunday nights, I feel real bad for them. And I hope they get back to where stability and normal is like a thing again, because it's just it's very awkward for me to even mention or talk about it because like I said, I still had a job. I still 9 to 5, the bills were getting paid. My wife's okay. We're not hurting. Everything could be better, but we're better off than a lot of people we knew. And it's like, if I don't get right back out and play with this record, it is what it is. But I want to see the guys who needed that money, who are like hurting, and they need those pickup gigs. I want to see them get the gig first. I will gladly wait 3 extra weeks as long as they get that gig first, because it's just a community sense.
100%.
So yeah,
That's
so long answer for a short question.
no, that's great. And I think that's something to really hit on, and I think it's so important. I think we've all gone through a collective, or we're all going to have collective PTSD, especially in the industry that we're immersed in, or on the periphery, or wherever you are. If you have anything to do with the entertainment industry, the rug pulled out from under you. Like St. Patrick's Day 2019 or 2020, it just shut off, right? And I remember when they made the announcement and it was like, well, we're gonna have a couple weeks or whatever. I was hosting a nightly trivia on Stage West, or every 2 nights or whatever it was, a couple times a week, we were doing this trivia on Stage West's Facebook page just to try to keep attention on it. And I would like drink a bottle of wine and do like trivia, like handwritten, like I would draw stuff on paper and everything, like real cheesy. And like we did it for like 2 weeks, and it was like, we're gonna do this until we open back up. And then like as it started going, I was just like, number one, my liver can't take this. Number two, like it just felt like I was watching like these people, and we were giving stuff away and all this stuff, but it was like I was just watching everybody I love around me like kind of lose what they've worked so hard for a long time. And
Yeah.
it sucked, especially like you said, for the gig guys who they count on that. You know, a lot of people in our area, I don't think people realize that a lot of people in our area, like that's they don't have a 9 to 5. Like they play 5 times a week, and they make a decent living because there's so much live music in Northeast PA and Central PA and
Oh, yeah.
New York where they could go and do it. And that all got pulled away from everybody. So hopefully we get them back on their feet sooner than later.
Yeah, I mean, I remember like I was in Florida the week before everything got shut down, and then we're still talking no masks yet. So like when you could say like, oh, I was at this place a month before everything, there's a good chance that you weren't anywhere near. It's like we're talking within 5 days of the world shutting down, I'm in one of the hot spots. I can't, it blows my mind. It freaks me out, the fact that like I was this close to the danger and you didn't know about it. Like in 1 week, I went from just normal, no masks, touching, hugging everybody, what's going on, everything, blah, blah, blah. A week later, nope. Now we got to learn about masks. Now we got to learn about how to wash our hands every single, 10 minutes. It was just like, what is going on? 2 weeks. Nope. Here we are. But, it is what it's one of these, there's no point in getting mad anymore because you can get aggravated that this is still going on as long as it has. That's your right. That's just a human right though. But man, you just got to accept it now. Like this is what it is, but I really want to see the venues start to open back up, like places like Carl Hall, especially Carl Hall, because I love those guys down there. Great rapport with them. We work together very closely with certain things, and it's like they're going to start doing their shows down there. It's like I want it to happen. It's like I don't want to get my hopes up, but I want so bad for just there it is. It's like we're starting to get there again. Who knows?
Right. Well, hey, thank you for gracing us with your presence this evening.
Glad to help. That's what hey man, I'm very, very grateful that you enjoy it, that listen to it. It's one of those things where like when you make a record like this, that this is not what is gonna, like, this is not $1 million or million seller thing. It's a folk record. I know what I'm doing, and I know what I'm doing is not for everybody, and I am 1,000% okay with that because this is what I want to do, and it's like that's why I could rest easy on this music thing that I'm doing. Again, it's a big community, but a lot of people don't know about it. But it's not for everybody, and I'm okay with it. So, but I appreciate the time that people take and listen to it, because I know a lot of people don't like this kind of thing. But like, that's a pretty good song. And stuff like that. And that's all it is. Ain't gonna win the war overnight. You got to win the battles along the way. So that's what I'm doing right now. So hopefully get to play a little bit more out and get more people into it. So we'll see.
Oh, I'm excited for everything. And thanks for being with us.
Absolutely, my friend. Thank you so much.